Hi, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Books and Beaches. So it is time to talk about all of the books that I read in the month of June. So it should come as no surprise that June was a bit of a slower month for me. And I say that because, as you know, I didn't put a lot of videos out in the month of June. And like I've said in a lot of my videos before, June was one, a busy month, and two, I was sick and it was the end of the school year, so I just did not read as much as I normally do. Now, any reading is good reading for me, so I can't complain necessarily, and I'm still happy with the amount of books that I read, but it is definitely probably the lowest number of books that I read this year, and that's okay. July is already looking to be a better month. I am going on vacation next week, so I know I will have a lot of time to read because it is a camping vacation, and that is usually just my goal while I'm camping, is to sit back, jump in my hammock, and yes, my hammock. I know all of you just love when I say it like that. And just, enjoy some reading. So without further ado, let's jump in and talk about the books I actually did read in the month of June. So in June, I was able to read, let me just double check, but it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now the fifth book, technically I did finish on July 1st, but since I read the majority of it in June, I'm counting it towards June. And these are my numbers, so I guess it doesn't matter. Now, a couple of these were NetGalley books, and then the rest, actually, mostly I did a lot of reading on my Kindle. And so, but like I said, it was just a slower month. I was in a little bit of a slump, and a couple of these books I actually blame for my slump, but that is okay. So the very first book that I finished in June was The Summer She Went Missing by Chelsea Icasso. And I'm looking over here because I do have my computer here with me. Because I finished this one so long ago that I have to remind myself what this one was about. But this was one that I had off of NetGalley, and this is YA. And this was about a girl, and her name was Paige, and she, every summer, her family goes to stay with one of her, I want to say it was her mom's best friend's family, at their summer house in this resort town. And one year, her friend Audrey goes missing, and they have no idea where she has gone. And the premise of our book then is the following summer, where Audrey is still missing, and our main character Paige and Audrey's brother, who are kind of an item, basically have set out to figure out where Audrey went. And because the case has gone cold, the cops have kind of stopped looking, and so they have kind of brought it upon themselves to try to figure this out, which is very standard, typical YA, mystery thriller sort of setup. This one for me was okay. I rated it a 3. I just remember it not being as gripping as I wanted it to be. There were things that I didn't expect to happen, but this was part of where I just felt like the book was longer than it needed to be. And now when I go back and look, it was only 384 pages, which is not that long, but I feel like it just dragged in the middle where I was just like, okay, come on, we don't need these things in there. And so without giving too many details, because I don't want to give things away, I think for me, there was just too much in there that didn't need to be in there. So the ending, yes, I thought the ending was good. There were things about the ending that I thought were surprising, and things that I wouldn't have guessed, but just too long for me. So that was the first book that I finished. After that, I picked up one of my more anticipated reads for the year, and this was a book that I also had on NetGalley, and that was If Something Happens to Me by Alex Finley. Now, I do remember that I started this in the month of May, because I started this on Memorial Day weekend, and I had started this right after I finished the Liv Constantine book. Oh my gosh, The Last Mrs. Parrish. And I did not want to put this down. I was so intrigued, and unfortunately the only reason I needed to put this down was because I didn't finish it before the end of that weekend, and then had jumped into, the last week of school and the craziness at the end of the school year. And it just took me so long to finish it because I didn't dedicate the time to reading it, but I really did enjoy the premise of the story. And so basically, we have multiple different people and multiple different timelines going on in this book that are kind of all connected. And so we have a girl that goes missing from a date that she's on with, I believe they were high school seniors, and no idea where she has gone. And we then flash forward to the guy that she's on a date with gets a call that a note has been found, and her car was found in the bottom of a lake with a note in it that says, if something happens to me, and then there's like a code that they have to crack. But at the same time, we are getting perspectives from one of the detectives and perspectives from, oh gosh, one other character. And of course I can't remember because I did read this towards the beginning of the month. But it just kind of took you on a wild ride, and you are continually trying to figure out how these characters are connected to each other and how the timelines are connected to each other, because not only are we based in, you know, a smaller town in the United States, you're over in Italy and things are happening. And so it just was a really well connected story, and it kind of kept me on the edge of my seat. I only wish that I would have had time to read it faster, because I think the fact that I had started it, and I want to say I got like 50% of the way through in my, you know, my first like weekend sitting with it. And then it took me so long to finish the second half of it, kind of took me out of the story just a little bit, which ended up, I only gave it like a 4.5. But I think had I dedicated more time to finish it right away, my rating might have been like a 5-star with this one. So I have really, really enjoyed the books that Alex Finley has put out. And this one definitely didn't disappoint. I loved how things were connected and all of the drama and things that happened in this one. So I think if you've liked what he's written previously, you'll like this one as well. So there was that one. After that, I had started a book, and I'm going to talk about that one in a minute because I finished it after I finished this one, but I found myself to be in a little bit of a slump. And it wasn't because the book I was reading was bad necessarily, but I just needed to pick up something that I knew was going to go a little bit quicker. So I picked up and finished The Inmate by Frida McFadden. And I always turn to Frida when I just need a thriller that I know I'm going to fly through quickly. Usually I pick up the audiobook because I know the audiobook is going to be good, and it's just going to be a good, fast-paced, you know, easy read thriller that I'm going to enjoy. And The Inmate is, you know, no different. Basically, we have a woman who takes a job at all-male prison as a nurse practitioner, and it is one of the only places in this town that she can get a job. And this is a town that she is moving back to, that she grew up in and had originally moved away from after kind of being part of quite the event, I guess. And I'm just double checking that. Yeah, I don't want to tell you too much because I was just kind of checking on what details they had give you in the synopsis here. But our main character, Brooke, has a connection to one of the inmates, and his name is Shane Nelson, and he's supposed to be like one of the very notorious like inmates in here. And her testimony was why he's in this prison. And our whole story goes from there. And I don't want to say too much else, but I know this is one of Frida's most highly rated thrillers. This one on Goodreads, I see as of today, is a 4.07. And I really liked it. There were definitely things about this that I didn't expect at all. I feel like it keeps you guessing. I never goes without fail that there isn't going to be some sort of noise from one of my neighbors. But it keeps you guessing. I really wasn't sure like who the bad guy was per se, and it really it kept me on the edge of my seat. Now, there were a few things that I was like, okay. So I ended up, I think, with a final response of a 4, but with a free to book, I think that is, you know, where I typically land. So I finished it in just a couple days, and it's exactly what I needed to kind of push myself out of that slump. Now, the book that it didn't put me in a slump for the content. It just, for some reason, because there was so much to it, I feel like it put me in a reading slump. But it wasn't because it's a bad book. It's just really long. And that book was Firekeepers Daughter, and this is by Angeline Booley. Now, I thought this book was great. So I hate saying that it put me in a slump, because it is not because the book is bad. It is really good. It's 494 pages. It felt like it was longer. I was listening to this one on audio. The audio is actually really good as well. I think listening to the audio was super important because it has a lot of the native language read to you. Whereas if I was only reading this physically, or in my case, I was reading it on my Kindle because I was borrowing it from the library, I wouldn't have been able to have the correct pronunciations of that language, which the audiobook gave me. This one deals with a lot of heavy topics. We have a Native community in, I want to say, you know, the northern areas of Michigan, who is dealing with a lot of drug issues, specifically with like meth. And we have a teenager who she is asked to help be part of the investigation, and sees a lot happen in her life as only an 18-year-old. And so I think this book is a very powerful look into things that are happening in communities like that, not only in a Native community, but in just any community, but especially then the Native look on that. And I think it's a very important message to portray, and it's a very unique story to be told. So I'm super happy that I read it, and I really did enjoy the story. So I hate saying that it put me in a slump. It just was a book that I needed to process and take time with. And it took me a very long time to get through that audiobook. So I don't think the story itself was necessarily too long. I do feel that all of the parts needed to be there. It's a book that takes a lot to process. So, and it centers a lot around hockey, which makes sense for being a town that's very close to the Canadian border, and things like that would be very popular. So I definitely think if you're going to look into this, look into some of those trigger warnings, but I think it's a very necessary book and a very powerful book. Ultimately, I think I gave it a 4. I will look into the other book that's in this series. I don't necessarily think it is I want to say it's more of a companion book than a sequel. But yeah, so I don't regret reading this one. It just was a lot to take on. So there's that one. All right. And then the final book that I am considering that I read for the month of June, I might have said May before. Oh, I always do that. Was Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose. Now, Geneva Rose has been super hit or miss for me. I loved The Perfect Marriage. And then I was not a huge fan of, oh gosh, what was it? That You Shouldn't Have Come Here, I think. Why can't I remember? Probably because I didn't enjoy it very much, but now I've got to look it up because it'll drive me nuts until I can remember. You Shouldn't Have Come Here. Okay, I was right. So I went into this one, not knowing how I was going to feel. And I think, reviews are kind of all over the board. I follow Geneva Rose on TikTok, and I think she's hilarious. Her and her husband, Drew, are so, so funny. This one really intrigued me because it's set in Wisconsin, and obviously I live in Wisconsin. And so, I mean, the title itself. But we have 3 siblings who are basically left to go through their parents' home because their mother has just passed away and their dad has been missing for like 7 years. and there is no word of where he is. And they discover a videotape of their parents from back in, I believe it was 1999, of their parents with the body of a girl who had gone missing. And they don't really get many answers from that videotape, but they start to dig into things. And that's kind of all I want to tell you. There is a lot that goes into this book. One of our sisters is dealing with a lot of drug issues. The brother in the book is kind of the golden child and, you know, has done everything right in life. And there's, I think, a lot of resentment from his sisters. And then you have, you know, the oldest sister who has dealt with a lot of family issues herself with her own family and her daughter. And so you have these sibling dynamics and then trying to deal with these issues that their parents bring in. And so it's a very unique story. Slightly predictable in the fact that I guessed where some of the twists were probably going to come in, but there were definitely others that I did not see coming. So I don't want to give you too many details about this one because I think with any good thriller, you should kind of go in a little bit blind. But I did enjoy this one a lot more than I enjoyed the last one that I picked up. Now, did I like it as much as The Perfect Marriage? Not necessarily. Just because I did predict a few of those things, but overall I gave it 4 stars and I did quite enjoy it. So those are all the books I picked up in June. Like I said, not a lot, but overall, even though it took me a while to get through them, I think they still were good reads. What did you pick up in the month of June? Anything that I should be adding to my list? I really look forward to my July reads, and I have a fun project, so stay tuned because you will see that soon. As always, if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.